Hi, this is Danielle Kepperling, host of the Practical Preservation Podcast. And I wanted to tell you about something exciting that Jonathan and I have been working on. It's the Kepperling Preservation Hub, and it is an online resource center that you can find a lot of answers to your questions. Um, it's how to blog post, videos, links with resources, downloadable PDF books, one about common mistakes that people make, and one about finding a contractor. There's training videos. There's also a podcast transcript archive. There's a one on one consult with me. And twice a month, we're going to have virtual coffee breaks where you can jump on a Zoom with me and Jonathan, and have your questions answered. Sometimes we'll also have special guests that will be experts in their specific trade, that will be able to also answer your questions. And for a limited time, you can get the founders rate, which is $10 off per month for the lifetime of your membership. And when you figure it out, it's like getting a few months a year for free. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you about that and let you know that we're very excited. We've been working hard on it. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Send a message through one of our social media channels, send me an email, call, however it works to reach out. But we hope that you'll join us in the hub, and we look forward to getting to know you and your house a little better.
Thank you for tuning in to the Practical Preservation Podcast. Please take a moment to visit our website, practicalpreservationservices.com, for additional information and tips to help you restore your historical home. If you've not done so, please subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, and also like us on Facebook. Welcome to the Practical Preservation Podcast, hosted by Danielle and Jonathan Kepperling. Kepperling Preservation Services is a family-owned business based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, dedicated to the preservation of our built architectural history for today's use as well as future generations. Our weekly podcast provides you with expert advice specific to the unique needs of renovating a historic home, educating by sharing our From the Trenches preservation knowledge and our guests' expertise, balancing modern needs while maintaining the historical significance, character, and beauty of your period home.
So today on the Practical Preservation Podcast, I have Mike Lemieux. Is that right?
Lemieux.
Lemieux, and Jen MacDonald, co-owners of Full Circle Homes, and former co-host of Houses with History. And regular listeners to the podcast will know I have no talent for language. I had someone on at Christmas talking about Pennsylvania Dutch. He was trying to teach me how to say Merry Christmas, and I just proved to the world that I have no talent.
So, we all have to be good at something, right?
Right. So tell me about your background.
Yeah. So Jen and I have known each other since we were teenagers, and we kind of reconnected later in life over real estate and our love of antique homes, really.
I mean, it really started as investing in property to find passive income. We both had our day jobs in the city. We both have finance backgrounds, actually. We do not have, art backgrounds or, sort of construction backgrounds, as Michael's father's a finished carpenter.
Yep.
But we didn't really have that. We just kind of dove right in on our first investment property together.
Mm-hmm.
I think we hadn't even been officially dating yet when we started this, so we didn't kill our other. Yeah, we managed to survive one 1800s multifamily. It was quite a learning experience. It had every issue known to man, including an infestation of bed bugs, which was quite an eye-opener for us, how to get rid of bed bugs. But
We learned how.
yeah, that was not fun, but we did it again and again and again, and we just keep doing it. Now we do restoration work for clients. We do a lot of design work as well as construction. And yeah, I feel like at least for me, I'm working my dream job. I did not like being behind a computer working on spreadsheets all day. So I love this.
That's great. And yeah, it's funny to me all the different ways that people come into preservation, just from doing the podcast.
Yeah.
Like so many different ways that people do. So what kind of drew you in, besides wanting the passive income, to history or preservation?
Well, it's kind of funny. Like Jen had just said, being able to do a dream job in a sense, kind of what we do, we're really lucky and very fortunate that people entrust us with their homes. But a lot of that trust has been garnered and built through all the work that we've done. And we kind of hit this crossroads when we got together, and we had both said, well, thinking future planning, kind of, trying to invest in real estate back in, it was 2014, 15, when to us prices had gone way up, and we were starting to go, geez, we can't afford a lot of these flips.
The multifamilies,
right? And we were looking at the multis, and so we both said, well, what if we looked at some of the properties nobody was looking at? And at the time, there's a lot of the houses that were still around with tarps on the roof, or hidden in the woods and falling apart, that everybody said was going to be a knockdown. And we said, well, we can do this, this is not, it can't be that hard. And so, one by one, we started buying these either foreclosed or dilapidated antique homes, things that are, 1800s, 1700s, late 1600s, things that most people had no idea what to do. Things that people said, take the plaster out of it, take the floors out of it. And we're going, no, we'll figure this out. So much so that we started to develop a niche in doing that. And I remember, and it was really funny, and I give Jenny a lot of credit, so much so that we were, trying to do our own plaster even in the beginning. And Jen discovered the New Mexico clay plaster on a trip up to a friend of ours' house in Vermont. And she's like, well, I think I can do that. And she ordered the whole kit, and she's there with her trowel and everything doing it. And
it's so easy.
She's like a week or two in, and she's going, oh my God. And she starts making phone calls.
Night and weekend.
Totally.
Not during the day.
Totally night.
Like after day job.
So she starts making phone calls. Oh God, completely cooked. And she discovers this guy that's as Irish as can be. You can barely hear what he's saying, understand it. And then he knew how to do the New Mexico clay plaster. She had him come down and help, and he fixed everything. And he's been our plasterer ever since.
Yeah, like a decade now.
Yeah,
that's right. I see myself in that story though, because I often get myself in the middle of something, and I'm like, this is not as much fun as I thought it would be.
Oh my God! Yeah.
I've learned now that if I look at something and think it's super easy, it's not going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Or it's never going to be what you think it's going to be when you start, right? And you never know how bad it's going to be, or how dangerous, or how tricky to figure out. But then I think, at least for us, we started to say, oh, we can figure this out. And then
find the right resources.
Right. Which is like finding the right windows, finding the right hardware, finding the right antiques.
And finding the right finish carpenter.
Right. And once you get over those initial hurdles, then you learn, oh, I can put this historic property back together.
Yeah.
And wait a minute, I have 300 years of design history I can pick from.
Oh, yeah.
And it becomes this evolution where it's the challenge is so much fun, because you create this piece of artwork that you can restore and share with the whole community.
Right.
But so going back to just the passion, I think working on antique houses is just so much more fun for both of us, as we love the history. and we both grew up in Sandwich, which is a very historic town. My mother and my grandmother worked at an antique property
Yeah, it's the
museum.
oldest town on Cape Cod, right?
Right.
Yep.
Sandwich is the oldest town on Cape Cod. So there is a ton of historic properties. We actually now own and restored one of those properties that my mother and my grandmother worked at. And so to me, and we aren't the best real estate investors anymore because we have antique homes that we rent them out, but we also probably could have flipped them and we could have divided their lots and we could be multi-millionaires and retired by now. And we didn't do that. That's not what this is all about for us. I definitely think about it sometimes though when I'm really tired. But we save these properties. The first one that we did in the town that we live in was 2 doors down, and it was 20 acres, and it was for sale by land only. And we were like, what the heck? Why has the realtor not even walked inside this house? She hadn't been inside. So we got inside the house and we realized how good the bones were on this house. I mean, this house, compared to all the house we've done since then, was incredible.
Yeah.
Like there was a little bit of rot in the back. It definitely needed some, new wiring and like the basics, but it was all there. And we just started researching the history even of that one and like, what happened to this house? Like, how did it fall, in disrepair? And, it was just interesting to dig back through the deed and figure out the history. And then when we did an open house, like the whole town came out, they were all talking about, Billy Benavides that lived there. It was only in one generation, one family.
Well, yeah, this is the first time since it was built in roughly 1898 that it had ever been up
that
for
had
sale.
ever been up for sale.
And what Jen and I decided to start doing, as she's describing, is anybody that's restored an old home knows what it's like to have looky-loos come around and people that are curious.
People want to see inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And you don't want to exclude them, but sometimes it's not safe. So what we said is we're going to do a town open house before we sell this property, and we're going to invite everybody in. And in doing so, it kind of brought the whole community together around it. And you learned a lot more about the house and what Billy was like and what the family was like. And it just became this way where we could do something good for the community, hopefully make enough on it that we could do the next house, but also really, find out that history and share our passion with everybody else that was around or, were neighbors in that community.
Yeah, we did save all the land behind the house. It's still undeveloped, and part of our own actually farm property now. And, we have another property in town where we overspent on 20 acres of hay fields.
I think it was a bargain. I don't think we overspent at all.
We spent on it, but it's 300-year-old property. Right. It's been a cow farm for forever, and it was going to be divided up into 7 lots. And so we still hay it. We have an antique festival once a year called Mayflower Market Days. It kind of feeds our antique store, Mayflower Mercantile, which is on Mayflower Road in Plimpton. But so it's all like the symbiotic thing. But we really started to, as I'm talking here, you can probably sense that we started to really feel like this was more important to save the land and the structure. It's part of the fabric of the community. It's part of the story of the community, and the history behind it is amazing. And as we dig into more and more properties, you really start to learn more of the materials and what they're called and all the different paneling and when did plaster come into play, and just there's so much to it. And so now, after doing when we started, I didn't know much, but now, like we saved. I mean, Michael's always saved everything, but we really saved
you do too.
everything.
She saves the knickknacks, the housewares, the furniture.
Yeah.
And then I save all the building stuff.
Yeah. No, yeah.
It kind of comes together.
We save the house sheathing if we have to take down a little part of a structure, which we almost never do. But if we have to, we save the sheathing and
You
we'll
try to.
recycle into
Yeah.
something else.
Yep.
And like these are materials you just can never get back. And we
That's
just
very
Michael spent 2 years planning on a move. We moved a 300-year-old house onto the property that was it was sort of part of that property that
It's
I
contiguous to
previously
it. Yeah.
mentioned.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We are putting that 300-year, well, we just moved it, the 300-year-old property there. And when we lifted up the structure, it moved it, a mile down the road. It is amazing to see, like, it's solid as a rock.
Yeah.
Like someone's going to put that in a dumpster and you can't get those materials back. So
No,
I think that's really important too, is recycling.
yeah. And I had someone from repurposing Savannah on a few months ago on the podcast, and she was talking about how much more carbon dense these materials are too. So when they go in the
Oh, yeah.
landfills, it's actually worse than throwing new building materials in. So I thought that I had not thought about that before. I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, it's so wasteful when it can be
Oh, it's
reused,
incredible.
however it's reused. Yeah.
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 So tell me about Full Circle Homes and Mayflower
Mhm.
Mercantile.
Yeah. So when we originally started doing this, we were, like Jen said, we were both working full-time jobs. We were working nights and weekends, and we'd be in between emails at work or whatever, looking at real estate. And right. It's like, yeah, I'm working.
My
Okay.
boss trying to catch
The,
on. It's okay.
I think Jen actually used a mouse jigger for a little while.
Say that. Say that. Say that. But I was like, oh, quick, I have lunch break. I'm going to look at this house and I'll be right back.
But it was funny. And so little by little, we started to build traction and we started going. And then it was my mom who had actually said, oh, this is so special. You guys have come full circle. You should name your business that.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, that's a great idea. And we thought about it and we were like, that makes a lot of sense, because like we were just talking about salvaging materials. If you make everything come full circle, you can find the purpose and the repurpose and how to use it.
Yeah.
And old homes are, I think, the perfect metaphor for our business, and that's what we try to do with the construction and design and even our mercantile.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really ever own any of this stuff or
Right.
anything. You're just the custodian for the time that you're here.
I believe that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a question of trying to, I think, preserve the legacy, preserve the pieces and the story and the artifacts. And your legacy, if you're lucky, or our legacy, becomes part of that.
Right.
But we're kind of along for the ride.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're trying to do, have a good impact on our community.
Yeah.
In doing this. And that's what's allowed our little company to continue to grow, right? So we went from really being more rental and renovation focused to then, and especially during the pandemic, and when we started filming the television show, we had to learn how to adjust our business model, because we couldn't afford to buy 6 or 7 or 8 houses at a time.
Plus, we had so many more clients and people coming to us and asking if we could help them.
Yeah.
And so it just became it just kind of morphed into more helping others. So we'll do consults for people that are about to buy an old house, or we can now draft and draw and put designs together for restoration. We also do the construction. So Michael is a licensed general contractor. I'm the interior designer, and we have a little design team, and then we have a carpentry crew. So we have about 12 employees.
Yeah, we're about 12 right now between the store and the full crew.
Right, in the store too.
Yeah.
And then the store is locally made goods and our antiques. So it's all locally sourced. Mostly made in the Plymouth County region, but some stuff made in New England. And then we feed our 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 sickness where we hoard things, but we finally started selling some of our antiques, so we sell our antiques in there too.
It's fun though, you sell one and you bring one in, and you sell one, you bring one.
It's like a fun hobby that we always did. That's the other thing that inspired all of this too, is we go to Maine every summer. Michael's been going there since he was a little kid. So we go in July every year, and that's what we do. We drive around to antique stores and just hang out, and it's like a little treasure hunt adventure, to
That
find
is. You
some
find
interesting
treasures.
antiques.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you must know what that's like, Danielle. I mean, whenever you're in,
Oh, yeah.
historic restoration or
Yeah.
everything is like an exploration. You
It
try to
is.
figure out what you just found. Does anybody else know about it? No, can I find another one? Is there more stuff like this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when
That's
I was a
true.
little kid, my mother and my grandmother used to take us to Lancaster,
Oh, did they?
and or take me to
Yeah.
Lancaster, and we shop around, all the Amish goods too. Oh, it's so incredible there.
It is. It is. I enjoy it because we get kind of the small town feel. The cities, it's we have a good food scene, so that's exciting. But then we're on the train. We're an hour outside of Philadelphia, so like you get
Yeah.
like the best of both
Right.
worlds. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about houses with history.
Yeah. Well, we had, at my core, acting was always my avocation and the thing that I really kind of wanted to do. And it was fun because in doing what we decided to do, and when we moved to our hometown of Plimpton, kind of the first priority was to get some land because Jen was into horses and loved animals. And I was like, well, I always wanted to be an A-list actor. You wanted to have a little farm. Let's do your dream first because that's attainable. No problem. And and so we went and found our house now. And the first thing we did really, we did a little work in the kitchen, but then built the
Which
barn.
we're still working on.
Right.
There's like holes in the
But
walls everywhere.
we that's
fine.
part of homeowners. Right? But
Yeah.
we built the barn and brought the animals over here. And then as we were doing more and more house restorations, on just kind of on a lark, we started filming them little by little and putting them out on social media. And we had actually auditioned for this one show. I can't even remember what the hell it was called, that they had on HG years ago.
Oh yeah, I don't.
And
It's DIY. I don't remember.
something like that. And we got cast for it, but then they
Canceled the show.
canceled the show. We're
Oh,
like,
no.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
And but then so again, you throw something out there every once in a while and you meet people and so it turns out
We
they
started
were
getting magazine articles and different
Yep.
things from the restorations that we were doing.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
right.
our Black Walnut house gets some visibility here and there just because it's so unique.
Yep. And so
yeah.
they were, I guess the network was casting for a show on the North Shore.
Mhm.
And they came down here and wanted to scout some of the properties we were doing. And at the time we were doing our Mayflower Road
Oh,
property
right,
where the store is, and
Yeah.
that was just a wreck. And we were doing 3 other ones, I think, at the time. So we're taking them around and showing them each of the houses. And at the end of it, the guy said, geez, you guys are really talented. You should have your own show. And we start talking and we just said, well, oh, yeah, whatever. And we said, well, what do you do? And he's like, well, I can't really tell you, but I used to be in this band.
We didn't know who he was.
We didn't know. Like we're looking at him.
A contractor.
Right. And then I'm like, wait a minute, you said your name was John. And Rich caught on to it first because he's like,
he did say just
he did.
He
said,
out and said,
yeah. No,
kids on the block.
Well, she did, yeah. But Rich says, yeah, NKOTV. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, that's right. And I'm like, oh my God, it didn't even connect. And I'm like,
yeah, we didn't know.
I don't know if I would have made that connection either.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
Well,
And we're like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
He's super down to earth. Look at this. So John Knight was filming for Farmhouse Fixer, and he got us in contact with the same production company. And we had, simultaneously been contacted by I think it was 3 or 4 other production companies.
Yeah, it was like the networks were looking for
just happened to be looking.
People working on antique houses or something. I don't know.
And so, that kind of evolved, and we we ended up going with the same production company, and we really liked them, and we liked what they brought to the table, and we did a sizzle reel, and that we really got excited about. And then they changed a few things here and there, and so we started filming. We decided to go forward, and we had no idea what it was going to look like. We didn't see it before it came out. So
Yeah, we were watching along with everyone else. So
yeah,
we don't get a preview or anything.
oh God, not at
It's a
all.
little nerve-wracking
Oh,
because
I'm
you have
sure.
no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're like, okay, let's and it was a lot of fun because when it aired, we're like, okay, it's so tricky because you hope that your perceived or the way that it gets edited or put together comes across
Right.
in a way that projects what you do.
Right. And your values. Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they changed a few little things just to have certain story beats that the network wanted, which was fine. But we were always fighting to say like, well, no, that's not what we do. Let's do this. And it was interesting. I think that when it finally aired, it really struck us because some of our sound guy, some of the directors of photography were just kind of stopping and said, well, wait, you guys actually really do the work. And we're going, yeah,
Right.
doesn't everybody?
Yeah.
And
Well, no,
and
and
like,
I and I know that they don't, because when they were doing one in the Lancaster area, they contacted us to do the work for the
right,
people that were just coming in.
right.
And
So
That's right.
yeah,
So
we
that's kind
ended
of
up
how it
not doing
started.
it because we
Right.
definitely couldn't meet their budget.
Right.
Oh
But
my God.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is that you say that if we hadn't done the work,
Right.
not only would we not have been able to even come close to meeting the timelines because the schedule
Oh,
is fierce, but to keep it even close to the budget never would have happened. So we were kind of, it was a blast to do, but you're running along trying to film with
oh
kind of an
yeah.
arm tied behind your back going, oh
Yeah.
God.
I think it with the timelines that they put on you and all of that, it's like really impossible to just keep going with it unless you hire other contractors
Yeah.
Right.
and you just become the hosts or sort of maybe a project manager. But we were such control freaks that we did everything. I mean, the first season we were personally moving every piece of furniture to stage the place. The second season, we finally got smart and hired movers at least, but like they barely pay you for to cover moving or staging. So it's like it's really, really tricky so you have to get really creative. I have no idea how some of those shows do it unless they have contracts with furniture companies
Right.
or others. We didn't. But luckily, like I said, we love buying antique furniture. So we had a barn full of
Oh,
stuff
you had
and we
options.
just figured it out. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't see anything on there that was made by like, say, like a Wayfair company. Everything is made either it was locally made. Like we use Angel House to make a lot of our colonial period furniture, or it was antiques that we had in our collection, or it might have been the clients. Sometimes I incorporated some of the clients' pieces. But that all those little pieces are so challenging when you're filming a show and you don't think about is,
Right. I wouldn't have
even
thought
just
about
down to the art, you have to get all the art released and signed for. So you have to use they were really strict and wanted us to use all original artwork. We couldn't like just pull an antique painting off the wall and hang it up. It had to be all signed off. And so you have to coordinate every room and down to every little detail. So we got we got really good at it second season and got very organized.
I think the
we
benefit
learned fast.
of that for us though, and it's one of these things that it's a little bit of a catch-22 to do it all, but it forced us, much like what we do with antique homes, to innovate and to try to take what would normally have been a 6 to 8 month project and condense it down to 2 months, right? And find a way to do it and source everything ahead of time.
Way ahead of time, yeah.
And then also find a way to do it where we're still putting the quality into the house.
Right, nothing
now. That's not what we normally do
Right.
with a client renovation or anything, but it gave us a way to kind of say, okay, well, if we did this in a real life environment, how could we do this so that we could grow the business
Mhm.
and thereby restore more historic homes
Right.
and
Yeah.
impact more people?
Mhm.
Right.
So even though it was a grind,
Yeah.
it's worth it in the sense of
Right.
how do you
Getting the
learn?
message out.
Right. It
Right.
gave
And
you
how do you
skills,
grow?
yeah, that you wouldn't have
It
had.
Right.
completely did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you feel like it captured like kind of your values and what you want it to portray for, the making, the preservation of these buildings important in
I
introducing
think
that
so.
idea? Yeah.
Yeah,
I think,
it it was tricky. So, like we said, you never found out how it was going to get edited.
Mhm.
So I think when we came into our second season, they made it a little bit more playful and a little bit more slapstick, which was okay, right?
Yeah.
Because we all like to have humor. I mean, the nice thing about that is in order to take on one of these old houses, which I know you're no stranger
Right.
to, you kind of have to have a sense of humor and you have to
You
be a little
do.
flexible.
Yeah.
And you have to realize when we write up a construction proposal, sometimes there'll be a to be determined,
Right.
verify and field.
Yeah.
Because even though a post and beam house is built like a typical post and beam house, you never
Right.
know who built it, or how it's going to be built, or what you're going to
yeah.
find,
Yeah.
or how it's
Yeah.
been changed, right? Um, but the nature of what we like to try to do is, you know, like we said earlier, you got 200-300 years worth of history in this house.
Mhm.
So we don't always have to be a purist and say, okay, it's a first period house. We're going to make every single detail first period, right? No, a modern consumer
Mhm.
wants electric. They want running water.
Right.
They want
Yeah.
heat.
Yeah.
But we can do that creatively enough to say we're going to do justice to the home, justice to the
Right.
community,
Right.
justice to the clients.
Right.
And guess what? The new family is going to want to be the next stewards of this house because they can now celebrate all of that history.
Right.
And then, like Jen was saying, we're bringing in local artisans. We've got a blacksmith. We've got a woman that does all our upholstery. We've got, and Jen has been brilliant at finding all these little pieces and bringing those people in
Oh,
too.
that's
So
great.
getting to send that message, which I think the show did convey,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I'm was psyched about,
Yeah.
and I do
That is
think we got to.
exciting.
Yeah.
That thinking local and sourcing. Yeah. 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 That
Yeah.
I think that's a great.
Yeah.
And it's
The
very different from some of the
unfortunate.
other shows. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
Oh, yeah. That's where
Yeah.
we feel honored, like
Yeah.
that they even showed the show because it is not like any other show on HGTV. And we thought we did well. I
We
mean, we
did.
did really
We did
well
do
first
well.
season, the ratings.
We did
Second
real
season,
well.
they moved us around a little bit. Despite that, we still did really well. So we were proud of that. I felt like, some of the things did turn, and I get that because it needs to be entertaining, like
Yeah.
the locally made goods. The first season, it was a little bit slower.
Mhm.
And then second season it became a little bit more humorous. So I think they were trying to provide a little more entertainment along with the hey, how's this made locally?
Right. Yeah.
And so it got portrayed a little bit different, but I still felt like they were still trying to convey that same message of, hey, this is really cool history, and this is why or how this was made, and this is how you could do it too. But it's just tricky in 47 minutes to
Yeah.
show all the details of a whole house. Like we had second season, we had our last episode was the historic house and sandwich that we redid. We did hand cut lab and horsehair plaster on the walls because it was historically restricted on the inside and the outside of
Oh,
that
goodness.
house.
Yeah.
So we really had to pick out the rooms that we were going to show
Mhm.
and then finish the rest of the house after, because there's just no way to show every
Right.
single house and all the details in that short period of time that they were filming, and also 47 minutes it's on air.
All the cutting. Yeah.
So it would be nice if people had more patience for seeing that in an entire season, because we made a whole season out of that. You make 14 episodes out of that one
Oh,
house, but
definitely.
there's
Yeah.
just not an, I guess, an audience for
Well,
that.
I mean, but think about it, right? It's funny because as when you're on a show or you do anything
Right.
like that, right? You always have to think about, we always have to think about, there's, you get network that has its demands, you
Right.
get the production company, you have this whole line of
Right.
people.
Ad
Right.
sales.
And what they're trying to do,
Marketers, yes.
well, what they're trying to do is the same thing we're trying to do, restoring a
Yeah.
historic home.
Right.
Right.
And they're trying to go, well, if I restore the home this way, if I film the show this way, is it going to hit with the audience? And if I change it a little bit, is it going to hit with a bigger audience? Just like us.
Right.
We're
Yeah.
like, all right, people like an apron sink. Can I find an old apron sink? If I can't, can I find something else? And can I make it still true to the house?
Right.
And you start to find the rhythm. And I think what Jen and I are identifying and what we found is what a lot of people were asking us for, and then how we could meld that. And so what we've started to do with it is say, okay, can we take a lot of the techniques we learned and can we film our current projects? And we've now launched those on our YouTube channel.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, it's been awesome. It's Mike and Jenny at Full Circle Homes on YouTube. And
I'll make sure that there's a link to that.
Full Circle Homes, Mike and Jenny. We'll send you that. It's really easy to find. But and what that has done is has allowed us to do some of the things Jen was just talking about, right?
Yeah, just slow it down a little bit.
Slow it down, pick up all the details.
It's also tough to catch every detail,
but that is hard. Yeah.
It's pretty easy, because we learned a lot of the techniques that they used.
Yeah.
And a lot of the background that I had in acting and filming stuff anyway, now I'm kind of going, oh, well, how can I use that? And
right. Yeah.
And so we've used some of the techniques from some of the production people, and we'll get the time lapse cameras going. And we've got a young guy in town here that we're real fortunate showed up kind of out of nowhere and said, hey, do you need some help filming? And we're like, yes. And the fun thing is we can slice and dice that anyway, so we can show it in a short, we can show it long
right
form.
Yeah, you have a lot of content from that.
Yeah. And there's a lot more coming, so the journey has been kind of full circle in its own way, but it's been fun to even try to do that.
Yeah
that is and I'm glad that you're continuing to share on your YouTube channel, and I'll make sure that that's on the show notes page.
Sure.
But
sure.
I think that's I think it's important for people to have kind of a more accurate idea of what preserving these buildings actually entails, because I think sometimes there's this vision of, well, I think there's a lot of visions, but I think there's this vision that either it can't be done, there's nobody that will do it, or that can do it, or it should be very easy. So I think so I think to educate people, I think that's so important. So thank you for your work on that.
Of course.
No,
we just quick funny story. We did have a couple of people, but we had somebody say to us, oh, I'd love to be on the show. So what do I have to do? And we said, well, you have to buy a house first.
Step one.
Right. And then it's a question of you need to come up with a renovation budget. And she was like, wait, I actually have to pay for this? And we said,
yes.
Oh no.
That is funny. But I can see people thinking that.
Thinking it's
completely.
Because then they're like, well, why did anyone else do it? It was not a free renovation. Like the show does not cover any of the renovation. But we had a few clients second season that didn't really want to be filmed, but they were like just wanted to be on our schedule, so they
ended up having to be filmed.
There's one and I won't call her out, but she just didn't even watch her episode because she doesn't like watching herself. Her husband keeps telling her how great it is, but she won't watch.
And she was so funny.
But that's great that they will have that record too. I mean, it's a fun way to document what happened.
Yeah.
So. Oh, exactly. Yeah.
So tell me about your favorite, and it's probably like picking children, project, stories or challenges.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting. It's every time you kind of get a favorite, which is fortunate with a house, you can kind of adjust if you move on to a new favorite. Right?
Yes.
It's like, all right, hopefully the house doesn't have feelings. Um, but some of them do, they're haunted. I think the ones that are always the favorites for me are the ones that are probably the most challenging, the most in need of love, the ones that everybody says, "What are you crazy? You never should have bought that. That's a knockdown. You should throw it in the dumpster."
Yeah.
Um, and there's
the lighter fluid comment is usually the
well, of course, there's all, we had one house in town here that my mother affectionately named the Swiss cheese house. And
they all had names.
oh my God, because it had the worst infestation I've ever seen of carpenter ants, termites,
Oh,
and
no.
powder post beetles.
Yeah.
And what we learned going through that was, well, it's all this process, right? The powder post beetles are always hanging out,
Yeah, we learned about all the bugs.
the termites come in,
Yeah.
and then the holes get bigger because the carpenter ants are eating the termites and they're pushing them around. And
So all three of them are working together.
totally,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah. I mean, there's like union contracts. They're like around the clock. And the funniest thing is we hired Terminex to come by and treat everything just as an abundance of caution. And the guy calls me up and says, he's laughing. He's like, "Mike, what do you want me to do with this house?" And I said, "Well, I'd treat it." And he said, "If this isn't number one, it's definitely top 5 of the worst I have ever seen." And I burst out laughing. And I said, "Do I get a trophy?" And he's like, "You're not upset?" I said, No. I said, "We're gonna open up every wall. If there's a beam that's bad, we're gonna take it out, we're gonna replace it. I just need to know what you need to do to make sure the bugs don't come back." And he said, "Well, I can tent the whole entire house for 40 grand." And I said, "All right, that's not in the budget." But again,
no.
point at a bad structural member and we'll take it out and replace it. And he's like, "All right, I think I can do something for like $6,000. And I was like, "Perfect. That works. We'll work together on this and we'll get through it." But and that house came out amazing.
Yeah, still, I mean, geez, that's been 8 years and there's no issues.
Yeah, no issues at all.
Yeah.
I mean, the Deacon Eldred was another one sandwich that's just near and dear to our hearts, and that was a favorite for me as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that was a favorite and the most challenging because we learned so much with working with the Secretary of Interiors and the state. And, there's so many misconceptions. I'm a real estate agent, so I list antique houses all the time. I'm better at selling antique houses than new houses, fully admitting that. But it's so funny. You watch people like pull in and they see the plaque outside the front of the house, even if it doesn't say, if it's not National Register, it's the name of who built it and the year. They will freak out and drive away. Oh, it's historically restricted. And that's just not the case in most times. It's just that the person loved it. The last person that lived there loved it and they wanted to just, put the original owner's name on the front.
Right. And even the National Register doesn't restrict you.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yep. And I don't like that to get out because some people think it does, and maybe it'll save some buildings, but maybe
it will. Yeah. But it's so funny. And I don't promote that, but I do tell them, try to educate them. No, this, it's restricted in most towns, maybe for demolish.
Right.
Usually there's a demolition delay, but it if it's restricted on the inside and the outside historically with the state or local government, local town or city, just depends on the layers of restrictions and the deed restrictions. But we have one that is the most restricted, and we were only one of 3 bidders on the house.
Mm-hmm.
People really fearful of these types of homes. And I mean, it's not great when you have to ask to change a paint color, but I mean, how often do you repaint your walls once you've painted them once?
Yeah.
And hopefully you're buying an old house because you love it and you're picking historically accurate colors. And hopefully you love horsehair plaster. But I happen to love it. I think it's way better than newer materials. But So, I can educate you on why you should buy it and all those materials and why you should
Right.
save those things. And it just it's an amazing process for us when we bought that one. I learned a ton from it, and that house was a house that I'd gone to when I was a little kid and loved, rummaging around in the attic and
Mhm.
hanging out in that house. And so it was an honor to be able to restore it. But
It was funny
it was also a
recently.
good learning experience.
Well, and recently, Jen had heard, I think when we were restoring the house, a rumor that Andy Warhol had stopped by the house at some point when
Oh,
he was
nice.
Yeah.
on Cape Cod. So she's like, "Oh, you know what? I think that documentary came out recently. You want to watch it? And let's see." And we
It
sat
was
there and
like,
started.
I see, episode 4.
Right. And we started watching, and we're like, "Oh, it'll probably just be like a black and white picture or
Yeah.
something." And man, I'll tell you,
It was the only video. We
the
were like
funny
feeding the
Oh,
ducks
that's
in the backyard.
exciting.
It was our
Yeah.
backyard. We were like, oh my God.
Well, and that's the funny thing. Jen, as a little girl, used to be out there feeding the ducks, falling into the duck pond, and here's video footage of Andy Warhol there feeding the same ducks, somewhere around the same time
Yeah.
period. And I'm like, oh my God, Jen, that's the back of the house, and he's standing right there. It's such a crazy, cool story, and
Yeah. And
and
now
there's
now you
so
have it documented.
exactly,
Yes.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I was just about the like people having to go and ask for permission. Exactly what you said. Like if you're picking historically accurate colors and wanting to make, sensible changes, whether it's
Right,
safety related or like modern
right,
living,
right.
those are usually pretty easy to get approved. It's when you want to do really things that are going to be damaging is when you
Right.
have trouble.
That's
Yep,
exactly
Yeah.
exactly.
right. Yeah, we
Yeah.
were able to add 2 bathrooms, a kitchen. This house had no, well, it sort of had a sink, but it didn't really
Okay.
have a kitchen. And we were able to add all of that, no problem at all. It was
Yeah.
just getting it all documented and working with the state on it. It was really not, it wasn't a terrible process. It
Well,
was
you know what?
just,
It's
it
funny.
just takes a little patience. And
Yeah.
like you said, it's the things that make sense that you normally add to the house.
I think, that brings up a really kind of good idea in a sense where I think some people will overlook the historically restricted properties
Mhm.
and not realize that it's actually a huge opportunity to own a home.
Yeah.
All you have to do is be a little bit flexible, and maybe the idea that you thought you're going to have, which hello happens to all of us when we buy a
Right.
house,
Yeah.
what you think you're going to make it might not
Yeah.
happen. Um, but sometimes the historically restricted properties, there are fewer bidders, and with properties being so expensive right now, I mean, I think it's a lot of opportunity for younger people or people that don't
Yeah.
necessarily have a house
Right.
to learn.
I think that's a great point.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm actually seeing a lot of younger people that are actually interested in all the character of an old house. They don't want the sterile new houses. It's interesting to see this trend. Even in interior design, you
Mhm.
see much more of the maximalist now, and it's
Yeah.
all very vintage looking.
Mhm.
And it's actually nice to see. I mean, we were never trending before, so it is kind of funny too to see it. But I love that
It's
people are.
timeless, right?
I love that people are interested in this
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
It's
No,
really
I
cool.
agree. Yeah. So we've kind of talked around it, but do you have any tips for people to add modern conveniences to their vintage homes while,
Oh yeah.
keeping the historic charm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, what we always tell people, we have a pretty lengthy process we go through with our clients and our own homes, right? We treat a client's home and a client's dollars just like they were our own. And we try to be very smart with them and very
Right.
thoughtful. But in doing so, that's what we always say, be very smart and be very thoughtful. The first thing we always say to people, especially if a house is livable, is if you can, move into it
Live in
and
it for a while.
live there
Yeah.
for a while.
I agree with that.
Learn about the house, learn what you want from it, and then take time. When people go in right away and say, no, I want a full gut, I got to straighten these floors, I got to do this, no, slow down, slow down.
Yeah. When I get the call, I need to straighten my floors.
Oh, the first thing, right? The first thing's always straighten the floors and replace all my windows, and we're like, no, stop right there. Don't. Windows to me are, no disrespect to Anderson or anybody else, but it's the biggest scam out there.
It is.
Everybody that has convinced people that, oh, you got to replace your windows. Oh, so we can sell you more in 5 years when the seals
exactly.
Yeah, I just love it when I list a house and there's that one pane with a crack in it. And people are pointing it out, and I'm like, yeah, it's so easy. You just cut that right out of there.
Right? Yeah, these can actually be repaired.
That's right. Yeah. It's like, what are you doing? Yeah. And guess what? You can learn how to repair it on your own.
Right.
And that will save you thousands.
Yeah.
The amazing thing is people always say, oh, well, I'm going to learn how to plaster, or, oh, I can paint. And I'm like,
I mean, I've said that.
Well, me too. I can never get those 4 weeks of my life back that I tried to plaster.
I can paint. Just can't plaster.
I know. But my point is that dollar for dollar, you'd be better hiring the plaster.
Right.
And putting the time into restoring the windows, because with the cost of a modern window versus the time it takes you to restore it and the dollars.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And that window's been there for hundreds of years already.
No kidding.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and so then that's really kind of the next thing is we always say, this house has been there. It stood the test of time.
Right.
So be careful how you modernize it. But think about, once you've lived in it a bit, how do you want to modernize it? Now, when Jen and I first started this, we didn't really have, climate change wasn't as big of a concern, meaning the temperatures weren't getting as volatile.
Mm-hmm.
But now a lot of times we design the house thinking about having, whole house AC and dehumidification.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the big thing that does is it says, okay, what do we have to do framing wise, or how do we have to make a chase somewhere that's not going to be obtrusive? And how can we sneak that behind a chimney?
Right.
How can we make that into a piece of furniture? What can we do creatively?
Yeah, no soffit.
Right.
But,
oh God.
We work it out.
We can't stand soffits.
Yeah.
We can't stand, anachronisms in a house that look like something that you wouldn't expect to be there.
Mm-hmm.
We have taken the time to make sure that our plumber, our electrician, everybody on our staff, everybody that works with us knows how to deal with an old house. Right. So make sure when you're hiring a contractor, they know how to deal with an old house.
New builders are not.
No disrespect.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. I say the same thing about design, about design professionals too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. And that's 90% of what I draw and design is an antique house, and it's not straight ceilings and walls and planning for cabinetry and things like that. It gets a little complicated. And like Mike was saying, we like to really be detailed and plan everything out. So we do like to draw everything up front and list everything out that needs to be done. But we do try to save as much as we can and make sure that it makes sense. Another thing that I was thinking about, people always want to get rid of is their cast iron,
the radiators,
and they're actually so efficient. I mean, they still make them and
they get warm.
They do.
And people don't think that they always think that they should just cut them all out and throw them away.
They're called radiators for a reason.
And it's so interesting to
radiate heat.
Yeah, I mean, you can still buy them, and they're so efficient. And why toss that out? I mean, it's actually, they're pretty. In some cases, they're the ornate Victorian era ones are really stylish. So in a lot of our houses that we've done that we still own, except for the sandwich house where we did put a dehumidification system and central AC, that house had absolutely no heat in it, so there was nothing there to save. But in a lot of our other houses, we saved all the cast iron radiators, and or we bring in salvaged ones even, and they're super efficient. And I mean, it doesn't dry out the space too, which is so nice too.
Right.
I mean, I think another thing to think about, which we always see as a hot button, people many times go in saying, "Oh, I have to tear out all this old horsehair platform."
Oh,
Right.
that's a big one too.
Everybody says that's no good. And we always say,
try to convince them not to.
right. If there's drywall, you need to probably tear that out because
Right.
that's going to get moist. That's the stuff that molds. The plaster breathes, it
It
dries,
will
it
dry out.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. It's one of the
We've
best
bought
materials.
houses with no roof, where the water was just pouring down
Yeah.
through 3 floors, and there was no molds. But yet, if there was drywall, that was all rotted and
Oh,
molded
I'm
and
sure. Yeah,
gross.
because it just holds the water. Yeah.
It's
Right.
insane, yeah.
But I think, floors are another one, right? When you're thinking about, people always say, "Oh, I need to get rid of these floors." And we're saying, no, just try sanding them.
Just
Right.
even
Sand
light
them,
sand.
recondition them, seal them.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of these things where, like, exactly what Jen said, save everything you can if you have to take anything out.
Yeah.
Make sure that the contractor and the service providers you're going to hire have experience.
Right.
Don't be afraid to take your time.
Right.
It actually costs more money 9 times out of 10 if you rush into it
Hmm.
than it does if you take your time and think about how you're going to renovate things and how you're going to do justice to the house.
Yeah.
I
I
agree.
mean, we tell people, I'm sure you do too, all the time, don't throw good money after bad.
Right.
Think about what you want to do in the end game and then figure out what you need to do in each stage
Right.
of a renovation to
Mhm.
prepare for the next stage.
Right. Planning is so important. And if you do that in the front end, you're going to save, you won't have to redo stuff because it wasn't planned out and, all those
Right.
things.
Yep.
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 Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah. And so
yeah. Oh, sorry. Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, when we draw things out, I have clients that come to me and said, I think I want to do, even in newer houses, I want to do the kitchen next year, but the bathrooms this year. And, I just tell them every time, like, just draw the whole thing now so you can plan. So we're not like, going through
Right.
walls and, messing a brand new bathroom up because you now want to put a kitchen in. You want to
Yeah.
plan everything out ahead of time and take your time for sure.
Do all of that stuff that you have to do to
Right.
prep for the next phase.
Right.
Yeah. So you mentioned climate change. I don't know. Are you in like a coastal area?
We are.
So
Yes.
so is that a concern too with the
Oh,
water levels?
huge concern. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because now when we saw the FEMA flood regulations
Mhm.
change,
Yes.
we had a client this past year that we had to try to figure out what to do because they were in an A1 zone, and now an A1 has a high water level impact to it that you have to consider, right? And we're doing another house this year where we're going to have to, it's a 1700s Cape, and it's right on a river.
Oh, it's such a pretty spot.
Oh, it's beautiful.
But it's a tidal river.
There was a mill there, and it's a tidal river, right? And when they get a good storm or anything, the water comes up and it literally floods right into the basement.
Yeah.
Now they're going to let us attempt to repair it, but what we're going to have to do is get a building mover and we're going to jack the house up and we're going to put it on cribbing. And then we're going to excavate all around, take out the old stone foundation, and we're going to put a new FEMA approved foundation that has these small flood vents so
Mhm.
the water can actually come
flow.
in and then
Yeah.
circulate back out
Yeah.
and go back up to the ocean.
Yeah.
You can't put any utilities or anything down there. And so it makes this design challenge where you say, all right, I want to keep the house the way it is.
Right.
It's in a historic district. It's restricted from an exterior, right?
Mhm.
So we have to say, we've got to reapply stone to the foundation, make it look exactly as it
Right.
did. Meanwhile, the grade's getting raised.
Yeah, I was going to say, now it's going to be taller though.
It is.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to
Yeah.
slope the grade off and do some landscaping and
Make
fix
it look
that.
like it's always been there that way.
And then once we've done all that and put the house back on the foundation, now we have to restore the house too. So-
Yeah.
It's a lot of planning. We
Yeah,
did
it
the
is.
drawings. Jeez, it's been 2
Yeah.
years. So that
Yeah.
was quite a bit of
Yeah.
planning.
I just know that that's such a, because that's where we built along waterways, and
That's
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
and so that's a huge problem for preservation. So I'm glad you
Oh.
shared
Yeah.
that example.
100%. Yep.
Yep. So what trends or challenges do you see
Ooh.
in preservation or in restoration in the work you're doing?
Yeah. There's several
Well,
sides
yeah,
to
I
it.
mean,
Mhm.
just going back to, I mean, as a real estate agent, I was just listening to another real estate agent kind of complain about this, but now it's all the energy code restrictions
Mm,
too. So if you're doing a full restoration in Massachusetts, you have to, apply, you have to, apply to the HERS regulations or
Yeah, so
the
anything, the way they updated the most recent guidelines, so the IRC, the International
mhm,
Building Codes, um, requires that anything over 150% of
mhm.
the value of the home or in excess of 1,000 square feet
1,000 square
has
feet,
to
right?
comply with
Apply, thank you.
modern energy code
Okay. Yeah.
across the whole entire structure. And then,
Mm,
as Jen was just saying, then pass the HERS rating,
Right.
right? Well, what that means for a historic house is that in a post and beam, truss framed first period house that has
mhm.
purlins going across the roof, somehow you have to figure out how to insulate it up to an R value of its
Mhm.
R60 now, I
Oh,
believe,
yeah.
which is a 2 by 12, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's
With
crazy.
closed cell foam, right? Now, not only that destroys the head height that you would have in
Right.
your bedrooms or any storage you would have up there, but then you're saying, well, what do I do about the historic structure and how do I
Right.
maintain that?
Yeah.
Not to mention the issues that we're now seeing, especially over in Europe with closed cell foam problems, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or any type of foam, right?
Yeah.
Um, so you have to think about, how do I not impact the integrity of the house? How do I comply with modern building
Mhm.
code? And then how do I also achieve what the new homeowner wants with their house? And
Right.
meanwhile, trying to save it, right? And there's a bunch of ways to do it,
Mhm.
but as we're talking about our planning process, it all comes down to being slow and
Yeah, maybe
thoughtful.
doing it in
Yeah.
phases
Yeah.
Definitely.
and not
Yeah.
doing the whole house
Well,
at
and
once. It's a
that,
good
and then,
idea.
and then you don't trigger that. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
but
That's
I would say
exactly
that's like a trend is,
huge.
just
Yeah.
going through, well, that making housing just so much more expensive.
Right.
Right.
But luckily the trends are leaning towards, younger, like I said earlier, younger individuals and families looking for houses with character and older houses. And some of that trend, when they're looking at older houses, is because they seem to be more affordable than a brand new house as
Right.
Right.
well. So they're willing to take on some of the work if it needs work. But yeah, I mean, it it it, that alone is very concerning. So you have to plan it all out and phase it out so that you're not doing the entire house at once.
Right. Yeah.
Because that can get quite expensive if you had to actually go through with all of that.
Yeah.
Well,
But
I think one of the other things, though, we are seeing that is more positive, right,
right.
is when you think about there's the old saying, right? Preservation by neglect,
Oh,
because
yeah.
someone couldn't necessarily afford to do anything to
Right.
their
So
house.
the
They might
house is the
find,
way it's been. Yeah.
right, which is awesome.
Those are the best.
So you can kind of say sometimes, well, now,
They haven't changed.
because a house is so expensive, a new homeowner can't necessarily go in and renovate everything all at once.
Right.
So there's a lot of times a
Yeah.
better opportunity that they'll come and ask us, well, what can I do?
Yeah.
How can I put a plan together? And they'll ask
True.
us sometimes, will you phase a project for me? How does that work? And then,
Mhm.
do I need to take my windows out rather than
Right.
I'm going to take my windows out, which is great because now we're getting the opportunities, like Jen's saying, people are open to it.
Right.
And as they become more open to it, then you can say, well, what if you go and you source this piece of furniture?
Yeah.
What if
Right.
you go talk to this person? IKEA's a great business, I'm sure, but the the table that you're going to buy there versus the table that your aunt was considering giving you, maybe
Right.
you want to take that
Hmm.
family heirloom
Oh,
because
yeah.
it's going to be less expensive over the lifetime of it and it's going to last a long time. And
Right.
people
How
seem to
long is
be
that
more
IKEA piece gonna
Yeah.
last?
correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
I
I've
mean,
been to
Yeah.
IKEA once in my life.
Overwhelming.
it's way overwhelming.
Um, Yeah, I always try to convince. I noticed that more so with my older clients, no offense to my older clients, but they're always trying to get rid of their antiques. And,
I've seen that as a trend too.
yeah, I mean, that's definitely a trend. And so, like, when I go in for a design and they're asking for my input, and I had one lady that was about to retire, and she had this beautiful trestle table, and she, was didn't like the honey stain on it. And it was like, well, just change the stain color, or,
Right. Yeah.
update it in another way, or maybe change the colors in the room, and that will make, the honey less offensive. I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah.
But and she ended up keeping it, which was great. But, it's like, if these are family heirlooms, I hate to see them tossed out.
Right.
But
Yeah.
we do see the younger crowds definitely looking for antiques and shopping in the
That's
store.
encouraging. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, for
So,
sure. And then I think, kind of one of the fun things is there is so much opportunity to use different materials
Hmm.
and to also investigate different processes. And I
right,
think, one of the things that technology has actually been really good with is it's much more easier than it ever has been to go on to, say, YouTube as an example, and find somebody that might be a blacksmith, might be a
Right.
mason,
Yeah.
might, know how to do floor cloths, might know a lot about wallpaper. I mean,
right,
and Jen has had, this ability to take from a design standpoint and take all that knowledge and put it together and then synthesize that into something that is on trend, and people can say, well, I want to try this color or I want to do
Right.
this. There's a palette available that just goes back centuries, and it's the skills, it's the colors, and
Yeah.
it's the ways that you can put a design together that, I don't know that we've ever really had at another point in history that we can just disseminate all that information so quickly
Right.
right.
and
No,
That's
have
we
true.
never
access
have.
to it.
Yeah,
No.
Yeah,
yeah,
No.
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and some of it, I mean, I think that there's a lot of good information out in the world. I've joined some old house groups. I don't know if you're in any, but
Oh,
the
yes.
amount of bad information is
Oh
scary
my
to me.
God. It's funny. It's
Yeah.
really funny.
There was a woman. So in you have a lot of like framed houses, but in our area we have a lot of stone or brick directly on the
Yeah.
directly on the plaster.
Yes. Yep.
And somebody was saying that that was their condition and they didn't know how they were going to insulate. And I'm like, well, you don't have to because there's no channel there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And but there was a woman from the Southwest who probably has never seen this condition before, was telling her that once she starts running heat in her house, it's going to cause condensation. It's going to ruin everything. So she needed to take it all off and put a vapor barrier on.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, no, no, no,
Yeah.
no. Like, don't listen to these people.
Yes.
I'm
You
like,
know, it's
I'm like
funny.
trying to find links to support my opinion so I
Yeah.
don't seem like
Totally
a crazy
crazy.
person on the internet.
Yeah.
There
Well,
was,
watch inspectors do this though. They
Yeah.
always are telling people to put vapor barriers in their
Yeah.
really,
basements.
Yeah.
And the houses that I walk through that are rotted and mold in the basements, those are the ones that aren't allowed to breathe and
Right.
have the vapor barriers.
Yeah.
I always, it's so hard because you have to kind of bite your tongue, but
Yeah.
well,
you don't know what you're talking about.
it was even funnier to me. Just and Jen sent me a video of, and I started following the guy
Painting the brick.
instantly,
Yeah,
and
that was
he's over in
fascinating.
England, I believe.
Yeah.
But he was talking about exactly to your point,
Yeah.
painting brick,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And how he improved the energy efficiency in his house. And I hadn't really thought about it because, like you're saying, we don't have a lot of brick and stone
Right. Yeah.
construction here, except in commercial buildings. And he said, so I took the time and he blasted off all the paint people had added to the outside of the brick because it was a closed cavity
Right.
brick house that he had. And he said the importance of that is that paint was almost serving as a vapor barrier and it was
The
trapping the
water couldn't get
moisture.
out. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
the house couldn't breathe. And thereby, when he was trying to heat the inside of the house, he had to heat up all this moisture too. And it made his heating system way less efficient. And by doing that and maintaining the ability for the brick to wick moisture
Right.
away,
Right.
it actually improved the efficiency of his house.
That makes
And it
that makes sense
Yeah.
to me. Yeah.
Yeah, there's always
But it's
something to
not, it's,
learn.
yeah, it's understanding how the buildings work. And yeah,
Yes,
but I do. There's so much good information, but you just have to be careful. That's what I've been
you
telling
do.
people.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Do your research.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah. Information is just an opportunity to ask more questions, not.
Exactly. Then you know what questions to ask.
That's right.
Yeah. So before we wrap up and I kind of do my last couple questions, is there anything else that you thought of while we were talking that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us at the core of everything, it was a way to kind of make a lifestyle around something that we were passionate about.
Mhm.
And I am just over the moon excited that the show resonated and the work that we continue to do resonates, because it just means more people have the opportunity to feel like they can do something similar.
Yeah.
Right. And that preserves our history and that preserves our communities. And that's the key to moving forward. You can't move forward if you have no idea where you came from.
Right.
And the best way to do it, the best metaphor that we found is through learning about a house.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. And the people who live there and work there and
Right.
all of that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So is there anything that you would like to promote to our audience?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, of course, Jen and I are Full Circle Homes. A lot of people don't realize that, we're in the Northeast primarily, but we do designs remotely.
Okay.
We have a lot of clients around the country.
One in Wisconsin,
Yep.
one in Ohio.
Yep. So, we're always interested to learn more. So if anybody ever has anything that they think we should learn or think we'd be interested, please feel free to reach out to us. You can find us on our website. It's fullcirclehomes.com. And then the most exciting thing, I think, other than our normal course of business, is just our YouTube channel that we've been working on.
And I'll make sure we have a link to that.
To add it to our website.
To subscribe and to watch.
Yep. To like, subscribe, tell us what you want to see. Lots coming. We do our a field event called Mayflower Market Days on our 320-year-old historic farm property right here in Plimpton. So if you're here in the fall in October, please come see us. And of course, we have our store, Mayflower Mercantile, open on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday. A lot of times Jen and I will be in there working. So please feel free to stop by and say hi. And we welcome anybody.
Yeah. Very good. And you mentioned your website, and I'm assuming your contact information's there. So if somebody wants to get in contact with you,
yes.
Go to the website.
Yeah, just email us at info@fullcircle-homes.com.
And I'll make sure that's on.
And we also are on social media. We have Instagram pages. I'm Jenny at Full Circle Homes.
Yep. And I'm Iron and Oil Mike.
Thank you. I always forget the name.
Yep. And we both share a lot across there. And you can see the house renovations we've done. You can also see a lot of the houses that we have that are available for rent. The Deacon Eldred house, which was featured in season 2, and then we have the 1707 house, which was featured in season 1 of Houses with History. Not only can you experience the renovation, but you can come stay there in person. So,
is it like a short-term rental?
VRBO.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
So it's on VRBO. The sandwich house is on Airbnb as well. Okay. But you can direct book right on our Full Circle Homes site as well. And we rent out the entire house for, I think they both sleep 6-7 people. So
very, very good. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I enjoyed our conversation.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
We did as well. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Practical Preservation Podcast. The resources discussed during this episode are on our website at practicalpreservationservices.com/podcast. If you received value from this episode and know someone else that will get value from it as well, please share it with them. Join us next week for another episode of the Practical Preservation Podcast. For more information on restoring your historic home, visit practicalpreservationservices.com.